Right now, somewhere inside you, trillions of bacteria are either being fed or they are quietly starving. And the strange part is, you decided which one about an hour ago, at the dinner table, without ever knowing you were making that choice.
Think about the last time you ate something with fiber in it: a salad, a slice of whole wheat bread, an apple with the skin still on. And you probably felt good about that. Most people do. And most people are still getting it wrong in a very specific, very fixable way. Here's a number that should stop you for a second. Fewer than 1 in 20 adults over 50 in the West get the amount of fiber their body actually needs every single day. Not 1 in 5, not 1 in 10, 1 in 20. And here's the part that surprises even the people who think they're doing everything right. The ones who eat their vegetables, who choose whole grains, who feel confident they've got this handled. Most of them are still missing one particular kind of fiber. The kind your gut bacteria are actually waiting for, the kind that helps decide how your blood sugar behaves after a meal, how much quiet inflammation is moving through the lining of your gut, and over years, how your risk for one of the most common cancers in people over 60 actually shifts. Stay with me all the way to the last two foods on this list because they are going to surprise you. One of them is a food you were very likely told at some point in the last 20 years to eat less of. It was wrong about how you were preparing it. My name is Dr. Kang. I've spent more than 15 years in internal medicine and nutritional biochemistry. I'm not here to sell you a powder, a cleanse, or a 12-week program. I don't have one. What I have is the research. Your colon is closer to a fermentation tank, roughly the length of your own forearm, and by most estimates, it is home to somewhere in the neighborhood of 30 to 40 trillion bacteria, not invaders, not something to eliminate. These are yours. Most of what you eat never actually reaches them. Protein, most starches, most sugar, all of it gets absorbed well before your food ever makes it down to your colon. Your gut bacteria live on the leftovers, the parts of your meal your small intestine couldn't break down. When it finally arrives, those bacteria ferment it. And out of that fermentation, they produce something remarkable, a family of compounds called short chain fatty acids. One of them, called butyrate, is the primary fuel source for the cells that line your colon. It helps calm inflammation there. It helps hold your gut lining together, the way grout holds tile in place, so things that shouldn't leak through don't. That is not a guarantee, and it is not a cure. It is an association tracked across enormous groups of people, strong and consistent enough that major cancer research bodies treat it seriously. That distinction matters, and I'll come back to it. Some of them travel into your bloodstream, where research suggests they play a role in how your liver regulates cholesterol and in how sensitive your muscles and fat tissue are to insulin. A gut that's well fed isn't just a comfortable gut. It's connected through your bloodstream to your heart, to your blood sugar, and by a growing area of research, even to your mood. Easy, but it is happening meal after meal, whether you're paying attention to it or not. Almost all the fiber advice you've ever heard is about quantity. Eat more vegetables, choose whole grains over white, aim for 25 grams a day. All true, all incomplete. And then there's a third category, one that almost nobody over 60 has ever heard called by name, called resistant starch. It behaves like fiber, even though it comes from foods that are technically starches: rice, potatoes, oats, beans. Resistant starch resists digestion in your small intestine, exactly the way the name promises, and it travels all the way down to your colon intact, right to where those bacteria are waiting. Gram for gram, it may be one of the single most effective things you can put on your plate to feed them well. The amount of resistant starch in a food is not fixed. You can increase it, sometimes substantially, just by how you prepare that food and how you cool it down before you eat it. Nobody puts that on a nutrition label. Keep one sentence in your head as we go, because I'm going to come back to it more than once before we're done. It's not how much fiber you eat. It's whether it ever reaches the bacteria that are waiting for it. Let's start with number 7. Lentils, chickpeas, black beans. I put legumes at the entry point of this list on purpose because this is the one almost everybody can act on tonight without buying anything new. Legumes contain a mix of soluble fiber, insoluble fiber, and resistant starch, all in the same spoonful, which is rare. One cooked cup of lentils delivers somewhere close to 15 grams of fiber. That is well over half of what most adults manage across an entire day in a single cup. That fiber does double duty. Some of it slows how quickly sugar from your meal enters your bloodstream, which matters enormously for blood sugar stability after 60, and a portion of it survives digestion entirely and reaches your colon, where it becomes fuel for the bacteria we talked about a moment ago. You don't need to become someone who cooks dried lentils from scratch. Canned beans, rinsed well under water to cut the added sodium, work almost as well nutritionally, and they take about as long to prepare as boiling a pot of pasta. Pick one meal this week, just one, where meat is normally the center of the plate. A chili, a soup, a taco night, and swap half of it for lentils or beans instead. And your taste buds barely notice. Your gut bacteria notice immediately. Number 6 is oats, and I know what you're thinking. You have heard this one before. Oats and cholesterol, that's old news. Stay with me. Because there's a second reason oats belong on a fiber list specifically, and it's one almost nobody mentions. When beta-glucan mixes with water in your gut, it forms a thick gel, and that gel binds to bile acids, which your liver makes out of cholesterol. Once those bile acids are bound up in that gel, your body excretes them instead of reabsorbing them. So your liver has to pull more cholesterol out of your bloodstream. That is the actual mechanism behind a claim the United States Food and Drug Administration has allowed on oat product labels since the late 1990s, tied to roughly 3 grams of beta-glucan a day, about what you'd get from a bowl and a half of oatmeal. Oats, like rice and potatoes, form more resistant starch when they're cooked and then cooled. Overnight oats, made the night before and left in the refrigerator, aren't just a convenient breakfast. So what should you do? Choose rolled or steel-cut oats over the instant packets, which are processed finely enough that some of this effect is blunted. Number 5 is going to feel like the wrong recommendation the first time you hear it, and that's exactly why it's on this list. Slightly green, underripe bananas. As a banana ripens, its starch converts into sugar, which is exactly why a ripe banana tastes so much sweeter than a green one. That conversion process is directly working against the resistant starch content, which means the fruit most people push to the back of the bowl because it doesn't look ready yet may actually be doing more for your gut bacteria and your blood sugar than the one they reach for first. The greener end of the spectrum has a job, the riper end doesn't do as well. So what should you do? Buy your bananas a few days before you plan to eat all of them, and reach for the firmer ones specifically when you're adding banana to oatmeal, to a smoothie, or eating one on its own. We're at the halfway point now, and the next 3 foods are not the ones people expect to see on a fiber list. If a video like this is useful to you, this is a good moment to subscribe. All right, number 4. Number 4 is barley. In Korea, barley isn't a health food discovery. Older generations there still remember what's called the barley hump, the lean stretch of early spring, and families leaned on barley to get through it. It turns out barley's beta-glucan content rivals oats, and in some varieties actually exceeds it. And barley, cooked and cooled the same way as rice or potatoes, builds resistant starch through that same process. It earns its place because of what's measurably in it. So what should you do with barley? Look for pearled or hulled barley at the grocery store, cook a batch the way you would rice, and stir a portion of it into your usual rice, even just 1 part barley to 3 or 4 parts rice. Number 3 is the one that will feel the least familiar, like chicory root and Jerusalem artichoke, sometimes labeled sunchoke. Neither is a staple in most Western kitchens, which is exactly why I want you to know about it. Where the resistant starch we've been discussing feeds your gut bacteria broadly, inulin does something more targeted. Our research has shown it selectively encourages the growth of specific beneficial bacterial families, particularly one called bifidobacteria, the way a very specific fertilizer favors one type of plant. Some studies suggest that this type of fermentable fiber may modestly improve how much calcium your gut absorbs from a meal, which is a relevant thread for anyone thinking about bone density after 60. Though I want to underline the word modestly and the word some. Inulin is also one of the fibers researchers at Monash University in Australia have flagged as a high FODMAP food, meaning it can cause real gas, bloating, and discomfort. This is not a food to dump into your diet all at once. If you see chicory root fiber listed as an ingredient in a high-fiber cereal or bar, know now what it actually is and what it's doing. If you want to try Jerusalem artichoke directly, roast it the way you'd roast a potato and start with a small portion. Number 2 is where the surprises really begin. Plain white rice has a reputation and in a lot of health content over the last decade. Not always a kind one, mostly because of how quickly it can raise the blood sugar when it's eaten hot and fresh. When rice is cooked and then cooled, something called retrogradation happens inside the starch itself. Some of the starch molecules, which had unwound during cooking, begin to realign into a tighter structure. And that new structure is much harder for your digestive enzymes to break down. Researchers measuring blood sugar responses after meals have found that cooling rice and even reheating it afterward can measurably soften the glucose spike compared to rice eaten hot and fresh from the pot. In Korea, cold rice was never a health trend. It was simply how leftover rice got used in cold rice dishes, in bibimbap made the next day, in rice balls packed for the road. Nobody in that kitchen was thinking about starch chemistry. They were just not wasting rice. The effect on blood sugar is real and it is measurable, but it is not enormous, and it does not turn a large bowl of rice into a food with no impact on your glucose at all. Portion still matters. This list is meant to sharpen your choices, not hand you a loophole. So what should you do? Cook rice a day ahead when you can, refrigerate it overnight, and eat it cold in a rice bowl, or reheat it the next day rather than eating it hot and fresh every single time. The reheating does not undo the benefit. And that brings us to number one, and I told you at the start of this video that this one would surprise you. So let me finally say it plainly. The potato. For a lot of you watching, potatoes have been treated for years like something to apologize for, something you eat despite knowing better. And I want to correct something important right now because I think this has caused real unnecessary guilt at a lot of dinner tables. Cook a potato, let it cool for several hours, ideally overnight in the refrigerator, and the same retrogradation process we just talked about with rice happens inside that potato too, often even more dramatically. Several times higher than the same potato eaten hot. This is not permission for French fries, and it is not permission for a baked potato buried in butter, sour cream, and bacon. I'm talking about a simple potato, boiled or roasted with the skin still on, potato salad in a cold side dish, or reheated the next day. The next time you cook potatoes, make more than you need for that one meal on purpose. Let the extras cool completely, refrigerate them, and build a second meal out of them the next day, cold or reheated. That's it. It's not how much fiber you eat, it's whether it ever actually reaches the bacteria that are waiting for it. And the last two especially show you that sometimes the food was never the problem at all. The clock was. Call it a gut feeding bowl, a base of cooled rice or barley, a scoop of lentils or chickpeas on top, a few pieces of cooled roasted potato on the side, skin on. That's it. That's the whole architecture. A quick reheat in a pan or the microwave doesn't undo the resistant starch that's already formed. Most weeks I tell my patients to aim for this bowl or something close to it. 4 or 5 nights, not 7. This isn't about perfection. It's about shifting the average. If you want to add a small side of kimchi or another fermented vegetable, that's a genuinely lovely addition too. Some of them run quite high in sodium. So a small side, not a heaping bowl. Grace was 68, managing prediabetes, and on paper, she was doing everything right. She ate vegetables at most meals. She'd switched to whole wheat bread years earlier, but her fasting blood sugar kept creeping upward, slowly, year over year, in a way that frustrated both of us. She started doing exactly what I described, cooling her rice overnight, keeping cooked lentils in the refrigerator to add to lunches, roasting a tray of potatoes on Sunday specifically to eat cold through the week. The hardest part wasn't the eating, it was remembering to cook a little extra on purpose. She started keeping a container in the refrigerator specifically for it. At her next check-in, 3 months later, her fasting glucose had improved, meaningfully enough that we both noticed it. And she mentioned that she wasn't dealing with the bloating and irregularity she'd quietly lived with for years. Quietly. She told me it felt like she'd finally found something to add to her plate, instead of one more thing she had to give up. That sentence is why I make this channel. If you live with irritable bowel syndrome, particularly if you're sensitive to what's called FODMAPs, some of what I described today can genuinely cause bloating and discomfort. Introduce these slowly, in small amounts, and pay attention to how your own body responds, because your gut is not identical to your neighbor's. If you live with diverticulitis, the guidance shifts depending on where you are in the condition. During an active flare, a lower fiber diet is typically what's recommended. Between flares, once you're stable, higher fiber intake is generally protective, which is the opposite instruction. So this really is a conversation to have with your own physician. If you live with chronic kidney disease or you're on dialysis, potatoes and beans, 2 foods on this list, are also relatively high in potassium, which matters enormously for kidney patients in a way it simply doesn't for most other people watching. Please don't make changes based on this video without running it past your renal dietitian first. And if you take levothyroxine or another thyroid medication, taking it too close to a large, high-fiber meal can reduce how much of it your body actually absorbs. Most guidance suggests separating your thyroid medication from high-fiber meals by a number of hours. If your current diet is genuinely low in fiber, don't try to reach every food on this list by Thursday. Add 1 or 2 of these foods this week, let your body settle into it over 10 days or so, and then add another. And whenever you do increase fiber, increase your water intake alongside it. Fiber pulls water into your gut as it moves through you. That's not a reason to avoid fiber. It's a reason to drink your water while you do it. None of this is meant to talk you out of anything I've shared today. It's meant to make sure it actually fits your life and your body correctly. Everything in this episode is educational information drawn from published, peer-reviewed research, and it is not personalized medical advice written for you specifically. Please have this conversation with your own physician or registered dietitian. It's one I believe. Let's bring this all the way back together. Lentils and beans for close to 15 grams of fiber in a single cooked cup, swapped in for half your meat once this week. Oats for the beta-glucan that supports your cholesterol, made the night before. Slightly green bananas, reached for specifically when you want the steadier blood sugar option. Barley, stirred into your usual rice a few times a week. Chicory root and Jerusalem artichoke, introduced slowly. Cooked and cooled rice, made a day ahead and eaten cold or reheated instead of hot and fresh every time. And the potato cooked simply, cooled for several hours or overnight, and eaten cold or reheated rather than straight off the stove. If you only start with two things tonight, make it the lentils and the leftover rice. They're the easiest, the cheapest, and honestly, the two most people can build into a normal week without thinking twice about it.
Not how much fiber you eat, it's whether it ever reaches the bacteria that are waiting for it. If there's one sentence from this video, I hope you actually remember standing in your kitchen next week. Let it be that one.
I'd genuinely like to know which of these 7 surprised you most, so tell me in the comments. If this was useful to you, subscribe. And next week, the 5 everyday drinks that are quietly raising blood pressure. I'll see you there.